Okay, so we're going to take a look at the part 2 of the tutorial, which is very exciting. It's going to be dealing with the creation of a custom edit screen that is going to allow us to edit these relationship fields. And the even more exciting part is that we'll be creating our own sugar bean, which will contain these values here. Basically, the sugar bean is going to contain this. It's going to contain the whole row, which is going to represent one relationship. So the relationship ID, inventory ID, and the contacts ID, the inventory ID record and the contacts ID, ID of the contact record rather, sorry. Okay, so the first thing that we'll do is we want to modify this edit button so that it contains this value here. So when we click on this edit button, it's going to bring us to an edit screen that is going to contain this whole bean here, which will pull from the database all of the info based on this. And then we'll be able to update that bean, which will update the date start and the date end records also. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll modify the edit button. And we can see here that the edit button is located in our previous metadata file. So that's the file that we looked at in part 1. That's the last file that we touched in part 1. And the edit button is going to be somewhere here. We're going to replace this whole part. So we're going to replace it with this. Don't forget, the values in red always need to be replaced. So we'll put our submodule here. We talked about the submodule in part 1. And the what is a submodule, what is a host module, and the SH is what was defined in part 1 here. So right now we've modified the edit button and we're telling that hey system, for this edit button we're using this custom widget class. So the next thing that we'll do is we'll create this custom widget class, which is going to allow us to pass that ID of that relationship here to the edit button. It's going to require a custom widget class of its own. So the way that we modify often in suiteCRM, if you remember, we try to copy an existing file, then we paste it into a new location, and then we rename it. So that's what we're doing here. We're grabbing this default basically widget class here. So it's an include generic sugar widget subpanel edit role button.php, and we're copying it to custom include generic sugar widgets, and we're renaming it to the same thing that we have here, but we append PHP to it. And if you don't have this folder, just create it. And always while you're going through the tutorial, if you don't find a folder, you need to create that folder structure. So don't forget custom, not custom, custom, and then include. So here it's just include, and here's first we append custom and then include. So then we rename the class from this to this. So if we take a look at our setup here, the actual widget, what we did here before, it was this was the class that was there before. So we renamed it to our class. Don't forget, this needs to be replaced with your values. Then we're editing the next part. So this part here is the action and the record. So that's what we talked about before. We want to pass the name of the custom edit screen. So the custom edit screen is going to be this .php. So in your case, it's sh relationship edit, and sh is your value. And the record equals, what is the record? So the record is going to be the ID of the relationship. And what you see here, it says layout defs, fields, UN inventory contacts ID. This comes from the var defs. So you need to have this inside of your var defs file, which is here. You see, so it's defined. This is what it is. It uses the vname value. So if we continue on, so basically we've changed these names, and then we're going to refresh. We're going to do a repair and rebuild in the system. And when we scroll over the record, if you look at the bottom left, you see it says module equals contacts and action equals contact UN inventory relationship edit, and record equals the record ID of the relationship the relationship. So this ID here. So that's our button is now modified. Now we'll move on to the next part, which is basically editing of the labels. So this is very trivial. We're not going to spend time on this, but it's just you go to custom extension modules, you go to the host module, directory extension languages, then you choose any label name, and then you're going to fill this up with the following template. So these labels, they're going to vary, and you can see the values of these when you go to the bottom. For example, it's going to be listed as I think it's like mod dot something. Yeah, so mod comes like mod dot label contact. You see these curly brackets. This means that this value came from this file here, from mod strings. So the next part is we're going to be copying the edit files. So we have already inside our core installation of Sugar suiteCRM. If we go to the modules contacts, we're going to see these files here. So let's go to modules, then contacts. And then we have these files here. So we have the contact opportunity relationship edit.php. So this is going to be handling like the you could look at it as like in the MVC setup. So the model view controller, this is going to be our controller. So this is going to basically be deciding what view to use and what actions to fire. So for example, it's going to allow us to save the record. So in any case, so this is going to be the contact opportunity relationship edit file we need. We need this template file for that's going to display the edit template. And we have this custom bean file. So this is going to be our custom bean that we'll be building. And then we just have our save file. So this is going to be fired by our JavaScript in order to save the modified record. So this will all make sense in just a second. We're grabbing all these files, 1, 2, 3, 4. And right now we were in modules contacts. We're just putting them in custom modules contacts. So we're copy pasting the files, and after the files have been copy pasted, we're going to be modifying the names of the files. So everything that is basically contact opportunity, we're going to replace it with SH, and then followed by relationship edit. So these parts, they do not change, but it's the SH that's going to change here, replaced by your values. So then in the relationship edit window, we're going to change the path at the very top. So if we go to the SH relationship edit, so SH relationship edit file, contact and relationship edit. Yeah. So here we will need to put this. There was something else before, but we replaced it with our values. So it's going to be custom modules, submodule, and then we're basically pointing to the bean file, so to the custom bean file. We'll replace basically all occurrences of this contact opportunity with SH, so whatever you defined as SH, and it's going to basically modify it one by one, and it's present in a whole bunch of places throughout all these 4 files. Then further below, we're putting in the new XTPL, so a new object of the XTemplate class. And this is basically defining our HTML template that should be used for the edit screen. So XTPL, new XTemplate. Okay, so basically, Okay, so this part here is going to be pointing to our new HTML file. And then we do the same for the save sh relationship.php file. So the save relationship.php file, it also needs to have the new updated require path at the very top. So it's also going to be pointing to our custom bean file. And now this is exciting. So we're creating our very own suiteCRM bean. We're going to be editing the default bean file, which is here. And all of this, okay, this looks very different inside our default one. So if we look at the default one, contact, relationship edit, you see how it looks? Stored, related, this, all of this stuff here up until the constructor function, it's all going to be replaced with this. And what this is, let's go over this one by one. These stored elements match perfectly what you have inside your database. So I like this straightforwardness of it all. Let's just say we're not like if you saw in the previous part of VARDEVs, it could be a bit nebulous, especially like if you're dealing with two core modules. But here, straightforward. This is inside your database. So if we open up your database and we look at the columns, they perfectly match these guys here. So these columns, I mean these two properties, they are not inside your database. We're going to pull them using the fill in additional details method. So just define them, but they're going to be there. We're going to pull this information later, not directly from the database. Table name, straightforward, this is your database table. Object name, this is going to be the name of your bean. So contact in inventory relationship, this is the bean that's going to get like instantiated. Column values, 100% match what is here. And these guys here, once again, they match 100% what is here. We're just basically drilling down and defining exactly what they are, what they contain. The constructor we're not going to touch. Then we're going to get to the contact inventory relationship. So this before was something else, but when we were replacing all of the occurrences before this was contact opportunity, and we replaced, when replacing all of the occurrences, we changed the name of the method as well. And now we're going to get to the interesting part, which is the fill in additional details. So when your bean gets instantiated, first we're pulling a bunch of values from the database, and then we have this like helper method, which is going to allow us to pull in even more details. So these are going to be performing simple SQL queries in order to fill up these guys here. So this and this is going to get filled up thanks to these queries here. And what these queries are, if we take a detailed look at them, they are basically values that we have inside our custom bean. So the custom bean in the beginning is just going to give us the UN inventory ID. So super simple, just with the contacts ID, we can pull the contact's name, and that's what we're doing. With the UN inventory ID, we can pull in the UN inventory name also. So that's why this is not a simple like copy paste, but as a even as a beginner PHP developer, I'm sure you'll manage. It's super simple query. So if the ID is set, then select the first name, last name from contacts, where ID equals this. And then the contact name is going to be get locale formatted name. We're basically pulling the first and last name. We're passing it to the get locale formatted name, and it's going to return us like the name, which is like first name, last name, based on the settings. And then the same thing for the contact inventory ID. So these values here, they need to be changed according to your own setup, right? But as an example, it's just to get you started, you'll know at least what's happening. So now we go to the submodule and hover over the edit button. This should show, okay, this is already actually done. So that part was actually already done. We didn't need to do that. Okay, so that's great. And right now we're going to go to our HTML template. So this is the HTML template that is going to be showing us the edit window. So we're going to be doing a bunch of cleanup and replace. So what we're going to do here is we're going to remove the contact select and replace it with contact name. So it looks like something like the following. So you're going to have this inside of your default HTML file. We're going to replace it with this. So if you remember, this value here comes from the labels that we defined above. So these labels are defined here inside our label file. But we also have another value, which is this. So this comes from your XTPL assign method, and I'll explain what this is basically a little bit down further, but okay, keep this in mind. This is a bit more involved. So to get the submodule name to show up correctly, we're going to change mod label opp underscore name to mod label un inventory name. So very simple. You do find and replace, and remove the opportunity select and replace account name, so it looks like the following. So once again, we're taking all of this and we're replacing it with this. Once again, this is the label, and once again, remember this value here, un inventory dot name, very similar to contact dot name. We'll revisit this in just a second. Next, we're taking this and we're replacing it with this. This is basically to set up our calendar checkbox. And in the same file right below the closing form tag, we're going to put this JavaScript here. This is in order to make our date picker work. So this part here is done. We're just doing the HTML template changes. And if you want to know what it looks like, is we're setting up this here. So this date picker, we just set it up. We put contact opportunity, so this comes directly from the labels. And then we have our name of the contact followed by the name of the unit of inventory. So that was also inside our setup that we put just before, which was the, you see here, un inventory name, right? un inventory.name. Perfect. So moving right along, we're going to go to the edit file, the PHP edit file, and we're modifying we're changing the opportunity name. We're replacing it with un inventory name and un inventory ID. So this comes from your custom bean file. In part 2, we can almost forget about the vardefs. It has this is not related to vardefs. This is directly from your bean file. So, and I'll show you why this is also interesting. If we take a look at the contact opportunity, no, that's not it. Right here, you see we're in the edit file, right? Look at what we're doing here. We're requiring our custom bean PHP file. So basically our custom bean PHP file here, we're requiring this, and this is going to instantiate a custom bean file. So it's going to instantiate it here, right? And we're going to end up with our custom bean file here by creating it. Basically, we're instantiating it here, and focus object now contains our bean. And what we're doing next is we're retrieving all of the bean values associated with this bean based on the ID here, right? You see here, focus, retrieve based on the record ID. And we're safe mapping the values, so we're basically grabbing the values that were that we got when we instantiated the bean. And if you remember, what it's going to do is just going to pull these values from the database, and then it's going to pull these values using the fill in additional details fields. So these values are already going to be available inside our bean, which is assigned to this focus object. Right? Perfect. Okay, so this is making more sense, I hope. Then what we're going to do once we replace this, we're going to be assigning, we're going to be changing this to this. And this is interesting. So this is what I talked about before. You recognize this UN inventory here? We're doing assign. So UN inventory, it's going to contain the name value. So look at this guy here, UN inventory. Oh no, that's too much. Okay, so if we take a look at it here, UN inventory is right here. So you see, to call this name here, basically, that this is the unit of inventory name, we call UN inventory dot name. And we define this stuff right here. We basically say assign. Okay, so our bean has the UN inventory name. So we're assigning the key value pair. The key is name, and the value is the bean's inventory name. So UN inventory dot name will contain this value. This is how we can use it inside of our directly inside of our HTML by basically putting it in curly brackets here. And also this is useful. For example, you see here the ACC capital name will also be accessible with, if we call it like this, it could be like ACC name. If we're putting it inside of our like PHP code, instead of putting it inside the like the span tags here, which we can do very easily, we can concatenate this using like a regular PHP variable. Anyways, long way of explaining, but this is very useful for all of your future work. You can this is how you can assign stuff to show up inside the template. We're going to remove the useless contact role here, which is safe map contact underscore role focus. Then when we refresh the edit screen, it will now display the right name. So once we refresh the name, this is when it will show us the right names. So time to fix the title at the top of the page. So very straightforward, not much to know here, is we're replacing the OPP name with account name. So you remember this, what I talked about before, ACC name, and then we access the item of this array. So we access the item of this array here. This is how we can use it. If we take a look at the actual code, it's right here. You see, it's very convenient. Now inside the same edit, the edit.php file, we're going to replace this here with our calendar stuff, which is here. So we're assigning the theme, user date format calendar. This is to make our calendar work. We're replacing, removing this block of code, and we're removing this useless block of code also. So when we refresh the page, what is going to happen now is this. So we're going to choose the new values, for example, this and this, and we're going to hit save. So when we hit save, what it's going to do is that it's going to call on our save contact UN inventory relationship.php file, which is going to instantiate our bean. It's going to retrieve all of our bean values, and then it's going to update the fields based on the changes that we performed here. So we selected a different start date and a different end date, right? And then it's going to call the save method on that bean. So by calling the save method, it's going to write stuff to the database. I'm not sure why I said JavaScript. It's not going to call JavaScript. This is a form processor, just a simple form processor. So it's going to do all of this stuff here. No, you know what? It's not a form processor. It is called like with JavaScript, I'm pretty sure. So it's all done in real time because we're updating the values in real time here. They get updated, and once they're updated, we're going to on-click call the yeah, for sure. It's going to do it in real time. It's not like going to redirect to this form processor. We can even see it here. So you see the input, we have the save button, which is right here, right? And on click, this is what it's going to do. This form action value equals this. So it's going to call this PHP file. And it's going to override it with the changes that we select basically here. And then it's going to redirect us to the home page. Okay, so let's take a look at it in action. The start date is 7th of February 2019. We're going to change it to 18th of February and then 19th of February. We're going to hit save. Boom, it's going to do its magic. It's going to update the bean. It's going to redirect us to the home page. I mean, back to that record, 18 and 19. Why did I just think, did it work? 25, 26. I thought I chose a different date, 25, 26. 25, 26. Boom, it works. If you found the video at all helpful, please leave a like and subscribe. What I'll also do is the files that you have here, so this whole file here with the diagram, I'm going to put it, there's like a new forum that came up where we can upload stuff like files and stuff. I don't think it can be done on other forums. So I'll upload it there for your convenience. It will be in the description. Thank you.